Imagine this for a second. You're a powerful ruler, maybe a king, but you're actually forbidden from touching the ground. Ever.
Yeah, you have to be carried everywhere because one wrong step, just, your foot touching the earth, might actually break the universe, according to their beliefs.
Or think about a whole village, right when a baby's being born. Everyone holding their breath, sealing up every single crack in every house.
Even tying up the mouths of animals.
Why? Just to stop the newborn soul, this tiny little thing, from literally flying away. It sounds completely fantastical, doesn't it?
It really does, but these weren't like myths or just stories people told. These were real practical beliefs. They shaped uh, pretty much every part of life in many early societies.
And it all came from how they understood, or maybe how they tried to cope with, life, death, the soul itself.
Exactly.
And that's what we're diving into today, this really fascinating world of ancient ideas about power, life, and this, well, elusive soul.
hmm Our main source here is a classic, a really foundational text in anthropology, Sir James George Frazer's The Golden Bough. We're focusing specifically on chapter 2, which is called The Perils of the Soul.
Okay, so our mission, our goal for this deep dive is to pull out some of the most compelling ideas from Frazer's work.
Yeah, we want to show you how these core beliefs led to some truly, well, mind-boggling customs and rules that dictated how people lived, from kings right down to, everyday people.
And what it tells us maybe about this deep human need we seem to have for control, for meaning, in a world that often feels, well, pretty chaotic.
Right. What looks totally irrational to us now, you start to see, actually had its own kind of logic within their way of seeing the world.
Okay, let's get into it. We start with this core idea about early kings and priests. They weren't just leaders in a political sense,
No, not at all. They were often seen as having actual supernatural powers, like controlling the weather, making sure the crops grew, that kind of thing.
which sounds great, but the flip side was if things went wrong, drought, floods, famine,
Hmm.
guess who got the blame?
Them, directly.
Yeah.
They were held responsible. Their power wasn't just symbolic, it was seen as active. And this worked in two main ways, Fraser points out.
Okay, what are they?
First, there was the idea of their direct will. What they did, or even what they didn't do, could directly impact nature. So if the harvest failed, it wasn't bad luck, it was seen as their negligence.
And the consequences could be pretty severe, right? Like losing their position or even...
Or even being killed, yeah. But the second way is, I think, even more fundamental to understanding this.
Yeah.
Their actual person, their body, was seen as what Fraser calls a dynamical center of the universe.
A dynamical center, like a cosmic linchpin.
Exactly. Think of them as the pivot point for everything. So any little movement, even involuntary turning their head, lifting a finger, could potentially disturb the whole cosmic balance.
Wow, so they had to be incredibly careful all the time.
Unbelievably careful, which led to these extraordinary precautions. It made their lives, even though they were powerful, incredibly burdensome.
Give us an example.
Okay, let's take the Mikado of Japan. This is going back maybe a couple of centuries. He wasn't just a ruler. He was seen as an incarnation of the sun goddess.
The sun goddess herself.
Yeah. And it was believed that all the other gods came to visit him once a year for a month, which meant, that month was called the month without gods because all the other temples were empty.
The pressure must have been immense.
Yeah.
You mentioned the taboos.
Oh, his life was just a maze of them. Couldn't touch the ground, like we said, always carried. The sun itself wasn't considered worthy to shine on his head, so he couldn't be out in the open air.
What about, like, basic grooming? Hair, nails.
Couldn't cut them himself, that was forbidden. They were considered sacred, so attendants had to basically steal the clippings from him while he slept at night.
Steal them.
Yeah, because apparently a theft didn't count against his sacredness. It was a neat little workaround.
Okay, that's creative.
Hmm.
But what about this dynamical center idea in practice?
Well, the most striking example was this ancient duty he had. Every morning, he had to sit absolutely motionless on the throne for several hours, wearing the imperial crown.
Motionless, like completely still.
Completely. Couldn't move his hands, feet, head, not even his eyes. The belief was that this total stillness was what maintained peace and tranquility throughout the entire empire.
And if you moved, even slightly.
Disaster, war, famine, fire, anything could happen. He was literally holding the world together by sitting still.
That's an unbelievable burden. How did that change? Because obviously that didn't last forever.
Well, eventually, a rather convenient discovery was made. Someone decided, or it was revealed, that it wasn't the Mikado himself, but the imperial crown that was the real source of stability.
Ah, So the crown just had to be still.
Exactly. The crown became the palladium, the sacred object, so they could just place the crown on the throne, and that freed up the Mikado from this incredibly taxing duty, allowed him more time for, as Frazer puts it, idleness and pleasures.
Right. The burden shifts to an object. What about things like food? Were there rules for that too?
Absolutely. Everything he ate had to be cooked in brand new pots, served on new clay dishes, common clay, interestingly.
And then?
Both the pots and the dishes were broken immediately after just one use.
Why? Just ritual purity.
Partly, but also a very practical fear. They believed if any ordinary person, a layman, ate from those same dishes, their mouth and throat would swell up painfully.
Seriously.
Yes. Same thing if a commoner somehow wore the Mikado's sacred clothes, they'd get swellings and pains. It was about containing that sacred power.
It's just amazing how detailed and pervasive these beliefs were. And you're saying this wasn't just Japan. This kind of divine kingship pops up elsewhere.
Oh yeah, definitely. Frazer used lots of examples. Take King Kukulu in Lower Guinea, West Africa. He lived totally isolated, couldn't touch a woman, couldn't even leave his chair.
He slept sitting up?
Had to. Because if he lay down to sleep, the belief was the wind would stop blowing. And that would halt all navigation, all trade. He was personally responsible for keeping the storms in check, maintaining the atmosphere.
That's incredible. Any others?
Then there's the Chitome or Chitombe in the Congo. He was considered a literal god on earth. People wouldn't dare eat the first harvest crops until he'd had the first fruits offered to him.
Or else?
Or else misfortune would strike them. But here's an even more extreme rule. Whenever he traveled, every married couple in the land had to observe strict continence.
Wait, everyone, why?
Because any act of incontinence anywhere in the kingdom while he was traveling was thought to be instantly fatal to him.
Wow.
And get this. They believed if the Chitome died a natural death, the entire world would just end. Poof! Annihilated. Because he alone was holding it all together.
So this really flips our usual idea of ancient rulers being all-powerful despots, doesn't it?
Completely. It suggests a kind of grim logic. These weren't just symbols of status. They were immense practical responsibilities. The king existed for his subjects, to keep the natural order running smoothly.
His life was only valuable as long as he did his job, essentially.
Precisely. If he failed, if the rains didn't come, if disaster struck, it wasn't just bad leadership, it was a failure of his essential function.
And the consequence wasn't just, a vote of no confidence.
No. He could be dismissed, or more often killed. The reverence could vanish overnight, worshipped one day, executed the next. But it wasn't seen as, fickle. It was logical within their system. If he's supposed to be your god and preserver and he fails, then he's clearly not doing the job. Make way for someone who can.
Which means these roles, these divine offices, must have been incredibly stressful. A burden and sorrow, as Frazer says.
Hugely burdensome. He mentions the kings of Loango, where the more powerful a king became, the more taboos piled up. By the time he actually took the throne, he was, quote, lost in the ocean of rites and taboos.
Even the Egyptian pharaohs, who we think of as these god kings with absolute power.
Even they lived under incredibly strict rules. Their entire day was scheduled hour by hour, when to conduct business, when to bathe, even when to sleep with the queen, all prescribed by law.
No spontaneity allowed.
None. And their diet was simple too. Only veal and goose allowed and a fixed amount of wine. No deviations.
Okay, for a really vivid picture of these priestly rules, you mentioned the Flamindialis in Rome.
Ah, yes, him and his wife, the Flaminica. He was the high priest of Jupiter, and the list of things he couldn't do is just staggering.
Like what?
He couldn't ride a horse, couldn't even look at an army under arms, couldn't wear a ring unless it was broken, and couldn't have any knots anywhere on his clothing.
No knots. Why?
Knots were seen as binding, perhaps magically restricting. He also couldn't have any fire leave his house except for sacred fire, couldn't touch or even name certain things. A goat, a dog, raw meat, beans, ivy.
Beans. Why
Huh?
beans?
It's unclear, but beans often had associations with souls or the dead in various cultures. He also couldn't walk under a grapevine.
It just keeps going.
Oh, it does. The feet of his bed had to be smeared with mud. Only a free man could cut his hair and nails using a bronze knife, and the clippings had to be buried under a specific type of tree, a lucky tree.
What about death? Could he be around the dead?
Absolutely not. Couldn't touch a dead body, couldn't even be uncovered out in the open air. And there's this amazing rule. If someone in chains entered his house, they had to be immediately freed.
Freed.
Yeah, the bonds had to be unbound and the cords pulled up through a hole in the roof and dropped into the street outside. It was like his very presence negated bondage.
That's an incredible amount of ritual controlling one person's life. And his wife, the Flaminica.
She had her own set of rules, too. Couldn't go up more than 3 steps on a certain type of Greek staircase. Couldn't comb her hair during a particular festival. Her shoes had to be made from an animal that was sacrificed, not one that died naturally.
If she heard thunder.
She was considered taboo, ritually impure, until she made a specific sacrifice to appease the gods. It was just all-encompassing.
So, with all these incredibly heavy responsibilities and restrictions,
Yeah.
what happened? Did people actually want these jobs?
Often, no. That's the surprising consequence. Men actively refuse these positions. Frazer mentions Cambodia, where kingship sometimes had to be forced on people.
Forced.
Yeah. And on Savage Island, the monarchy actually died out completely because nobody was willing to take on such a dangerous and burdensome role.
So this led to a kind of splitting of power.
Exactly. Frazer calls it the partition of power because the burden was too much for one person. In parts of West Africa, potential heirs sometimes had to be basically kidnapped and kept prisoner until they agreed to become king.
Wow. There's even a story of one chief who went around constantly armed just to fight off anyone who tried to make him king.
Right. And think back to the Mikados in Japan. We saw how they eventually shifted the burden of sitting still onto the crown. They also started making their infant children the official Mikado.
Passing the buck, basically.
Pretty much. Which then allowed the rise of the shoguns, or tycoons, who held the real day-to-day temporal power. But interestingly, the tycoons eventually got tangled up in their own web of ceremony and tradition, too.
So they became figureheads as well.
Yeah, they ended up as puppets, just doing rituals while councils of state ran the actual government.
Yeah.
It's this fascinating cycle where the sheer weight of the sacred duties forces power to be divided or delegated.
We see this pattern elsewhere, too.
Definitely. In Tonquin, the kings became purely ceremonial, while hereditary generals held the real power. Tahitian kings often abdicated as soon as they had a son, making the baby the new king, possibly just to get out from under the burden.
So across different cultures, this pressure leads to a split between the religious authority and the civil day-to-day authority.
It seems to be a common outcome, yeah. Simply because the combined role was just too overwhelming, too dangerous, too restrictive for one person to handle.
Okay, so we've looked at the incredible burdens of power. But that brings us back to the big question, why? Why all these complex, sometimes life-threatening rules and taboos?
And the answer, Frazer argues very strongly, lies in understanding how early people thought about the soul. It's a very different concept from how we might think of it today. These taboos, essentially, they're life preservers.
Life preservers, how so?
The core idea was that life, consciousness, movement, all that was caused by a sort of little entity inside the body, like a tiny person or a little animal. That was the soul.
So tangible almost.
Very tangible. Sleep, or being in a trance, was when this little soul thing temporarily left the body. Death was when it left permanently and didn't come back.
Okay, so the goal is keep the soul in the body.
Exactly. Or if it does wander off, make sure you can get it back safely. All these taboos are basically designed to prevent a soul from escaping or being harmed or stolen.
It's such a concrete way of thinking. Frazer mentions an Australian Aboriginal man responding to a missionary.
Right, the missionary says, "I am 2 in 1," and the man replies, "Yes, yes, we are also 2. We have a little body inside the big one." It shows that idea was quite intuitive to them.
And the Hurons thought the soul was like a perfect little model of the person.
Yeah, or the Eskimos believed it had the same shape, just more subtle and ethereal, but still a distinct shape.
And the people of Ninus had that incredible belief about the soul's weight and length.
Yeah, that the soul actually weighed something, maybe up to 10 grams, and its length determined your lifespan. So a child who died young just had a short soul. It's so literal.
And sometimes it wasn't even human-shaped, right? Like a lizard or a butterfly.
Exactly. Lizard, fly, bird, butterfly, cricket, even a white mouse. It really underscores how concrete and almost physical this soul concept was for them.
Okay, so if the soul is this small, vulnerable thing, how do you stop it from getting out? Where are the weak points?
Well, the most obvious escape routes were seen as the body's openings, especially the mouth and the nostrils.
Which explains the fishhooks.
Precisely. In Polybius, fastening fishhooks to a sick person's nose, navel, and feet, it was literally to try and snag the soul if it attempted to leave the body.
And that hide-a-medicine man with the hollow bone.
Yeah, supposedly used to bottle up departing souls, like catching smoke. Or the Marquesans holding the mouth and nose shut of a dying person, trying to keep the soul in till the very last moment.
Even yawning was risky?
Hindus snapping their thumbs when they yawned, maybe to scare away demons trying to enter, or perhaps to push the soul back in. And the autonomas in South America would seal the eyes, nose, and mouth of a dying person completely.
And the automers during childbirth.
Yeah.
Closing every opening in the house.
Every door, window, crack, tying up animal mouths. Everyone, including the mother giving birth, had to keep their mouths shut. The fear was the baby's brand new, vulnerable soul might just slip out, or a demon might slip in and snatch it. It shows the level of anxiety around this.
The idea of the soul as a bird also seems really common.
Very common, and taken quite literally.
Yeah.
In Java, when a baby was first put on the ground, they might put it in a hen coop and have the mother cluck like a hen.
Why?
To call the soul, like calling chickens, encouraging it to stay close to home, stay with the baby.
And scattering rice?
Yeah, among the Badas of Sumatra and others. Scattering rice on people's heads after some danger, or at a wedding, or during festivals. The idea was the rice would somehow feed or anchor the soul, make the soul stay at home, and protect it from jealous spirits.
Okay, so the soul can escape. What about when it wanders off naturally, like during sleep? That was seen as dangerous too.
Hugely dangerous. Because the soul was out there wandering around, maybe having adventures or getting into trouble.
Like the Guinea Negroes, who'd wake up sore and assume their soul had been fighting?
Exactly. Or the people in the Aru Islands who wouldn't sleep in a house where someone had just died, afraid they might encounter the ghost, the soul, in their dreams.
And the big risk was that the soul might not come back.
Right. If it got lost or trapped or delayed somehow while it was out wandering during sleep, the person wouldn't wake up. They'd die.
Are there stories about souls getting trapped?
Oh yeah, fascinating ones. The Santals in India tell of a man whose soul, in the form of a lizard, left his body while he slept to get a drink of water. It went into a pitcher, someone put the lid on, and the man just lay there, effectively dead. Until someone found the pitcher, took the lid off, the lizard's soul ran out and back into his mouth, and he instantly woke up.
Wow. And the Transylvanian witch trial story.
Similar idea. A servant saw a fly, the soul, leave a sleeping woman's mouth. He trapped the fly in a leather pouch. The woman became like a corpse. He got scared, let the fly go. It flew back into her mouth, and she revived immediately. These weren't just metaphors for them. They were explaining real phenomena.
Which is why you should never wake a sleeper suddenly.
Exactly. Always wake them gently, gradually, to give the wandering soul time to find its way back into the body. Startle them awake, the soul might be too far off, and they could get sick or even die.
And that belief in Bombay about not changing a sleeper's appearance.
Right, like painting their face while they sleep. That was considered tantamount to murder. Because when the soul came back, it wouldn't recognize its own body and might just leave permanently.
So, souls wander in sleep, but they could also leave while someone was awake, due to shock or illness.
Yes, absolutely. Sickness itself was often interpreted as the soul being absent, having left the body involuntarily. Maybe it was frightened away, or maybe it just wandered off.
And then you needed rituals to call it back, like the Mongols.
Their rituals were incredibly elaborate. If someone was sick, they'd dress the patient in their finest clothes to make the body attractive for the returning soul. They'd call out the person's name repeatedly, coaxing the soul home.
They used a cord.
Yeah, a colored cord stretched from the patient's head out the door, like a pathway for the soul to follow back. And a priest would read this long, terrifying list of all the horrors in hell.
Why?
To basically scare the soul out of the underworld, convince it that coming back to the body was a much better option.
It really shows how practical these rituals were meant to be.
Yeah.
Just trying to get that vital essence back.
Exactly. And you even get these incredible Indian stories about soul transference, like a king's soul entering a dead Brahmin's body, or a yogi transferring his soul into a king's corpse to reanimate it. It emphasizes how separate and mobile the soul was believed to be.
Okay, so souls can leave on their own, but the biggest fear seems to be them being taken, right? By ghosts, demons, or sorcerers.
That was a huge source of anxiety, yes. Especially around death and funerals.
Like the Karens in Burma tying kids to the house during a funeral.
Yeah, literally tethering them so their souls wouldn't follow the soul of the deceased person out of the village. Or, after a burial, they'd carry bamboos and tap them on the ground.
Why the bamboos?
To provide a path for their own souls to climb out of the grave area, just in case they'd lingered. They'd even make hooking motions with their hands to pull any stray souls back with them.
And that Burmese ritual for a baby whose mother died. With the mirror?
Right. They believed the baby's soul, which they called its butterfly, would naturally try to follow its mother's soul. So a wise woman had to intervene. She'd go to the burial ground with a mirror, catch the reflection of the baby's butterfly soul, trap it in a piece of feathery cotton, bring it back, and place it on the baby's chest.
A literal soul rescue operation.
Absolutely. And demons were another threat. The Annamites feared demons could just inhale your breath and your soul along with it. The Dayaks in Borneo, when leaving a forest, would politely ask any demons who might have accidentally captured their souls to please return them.
Please return my soul, Mr. Demon.
Something like that, yeah. And the retrieval rituals could get very involved.
Like in the Moluccas.
They'd make offerings to the devils they believed held the soul captive, sometimes including live hens as a ransom payment. Then the recovered soul would be carefully wrapped in a special cloth and brought back to the sick person.
And the Alfours of Celebes, their priests could gather souls.
Yeah, especially during housewarming ceremonies. The priest would use a special bag to sort of sweep up any souls that might have been lost or displaced during the building process, and then place the bag on each resident's head to restore their soul.
Did they ever see the lost soul?
Sometimes they claim to. It might appear as a moth or tiny bits of bone, a firefly, or even a miniature person like a little doll.
And the Flathead Indians in North America?
Their medicine men had a technique where they'd supposedly capture multiple souls, sort through them to find the right one for the patient, discarding any belonging to dead people, and then physically pat the soul back into the patient's body using a splinter of bone or wood.
Just so physical, isn't it?
Incredibly physical. The soul wasn't just an abstract concept. It was a thing that could be lost, caught, handled, and put back.
Okay, so spirits and demons could take souls. What about living people? Sorcerers?
That was perhaps the most insidious fear, that a human enemy, especially a sorcerer, could deliberately extract or harm your soul.
Like the Fijian chiefs using a scarf.
Yeah, supposedly they could just wave a scarf and catch away the soul of the rogue. Then they'd maybe nail the scarf to their canoe, and the victim, miles away, would pine away and die as their soul withered.
And soul snares.
Right. On Danger Island, sorcerers were said to set magical snares made of fiber, with different loop sizes depending on whether the intended victim was fat or thin, to catch their soul as it wandered at night.
Trapping it in a jar.
That was a belief among the Serays of Senegambia. A sorcerer could conjure an enemy's soul into an earthenware jar, seal it up, and the person would die.
It's terrifying. There's even that belief in the Congo about souls being sold.
Yes, that wicked enchanters could capture people's souls, put them in ivory tusks, and sell them to white men, causing the original owner to die. A way of explaining misfortune and perhaps interacting with colonial trade networks.
Hawaiians believed sorcerers ate souls.
Caught them in calabashes first, apparently, then consumed them. Canadian Indians had wizards who would strike a stone, representing the victim's soul, to make them bleed internally and die.
It just shows the immense power attributed to manipulating this soul substance.
Absolutely. And sometimes, if a soul was lost, a doctor might even try to replace it by stealing someone else's soul.
Seriously. Like in Amboina.
Yeah, if they couldn't retrieve the original soul, they might just nab one from a healthy person to put into the sick patient, leading presumably to the original owner getting sick.
That's like a chain reaction.
There's even a Karen story about wizards transferring souls between sleeping people and dead bodies, creating this bizarre chain of deaths and resurrections. The manipulation possibilities seemed endless.
And that Nass River Indian story about the doctors swallowing a soul.
Oh, that's intense. Believing one of their own doctors had accidentally swallowed a patient's soul, the others would physically assault him, stick fingers down his throat, hold him upside down, trying to dislodge the soul so they could wash it off his head and return it to the patient.
Just incredible desperation, really, believing they had to physically retrieve this vital essence.
Yeah.
Now, this gets even stranger, or maybe just extends the logic. The idea that your shadow or your reflection isn't just, light and optics, but it's actually part of you, part of your soul.
Yes, that's a really key extension of this thinking. Your shadow or reflection is seen as a vital part of you, almost like an external soul. Harm the shadow, you harm the person. If the shadow is detached or lost, the person dies.
Which explains how magicians in Wet'har could supposedly make someone sick just by stabbing their shadow with a spear.
Right. Or that dramatic story of the Indian philosopher Sankara debating the Grand Lama of Tibet. The Lama couldn't beat Sankara in argument, so he used magic, flew into the air.
And Sankara.
Sankara saw the Lama's shadow on the ground below, pinned it to the earth with his knife, and the Lama instantly fell from the sky and died. His connection was severed.
So people would actively avoid situations where their shadow might be harmed.
Definitely. In the Babar Islands, they believed demons could gain power over you just by holding or striking your shadow. Which is why, in places like Amberwina, people avoided going out around noon. Because your shadow was shortest then, almost directly beneath you. It was seen as the time you were most likely to lose the shadow of the soul. Makes you vulnerable.
And that Mangian warrior whose strength depended on his shadow's length.
Yucatawa, yeah. Strongest at sunrise and sunset when his shadow was long, weakest at noon when it was short. It's a direct link. There were similar fears about noon in ancient Greece and Romania, too.
Even beliefs about animals, like hyenas stepping on your shadow in Arabia, making you unable to move.
Or the warning about Zeus's sanctuary on Mount Lycaeus in Greece. If you entered it, you'd lose your shadow and die within the year. The shadow was life.
Okay, this connects to something really quite chilling. The idea of foundation sacrifices using shadows.
Ah, yes. Frazer calls these striking examples. And they persisted into modern times in places like Greece, Bulgaria, Romania.
Instead of sacrificing an animal to make a new building strong,
The builders would secretly measure a person walking by, either their body or sometimes just their shadow. They'd incorporate that measurement or even try to lay the foundation stone on the person's shadow.
and the belief was.
That the person whose shadow was taken or built into the foundation would waste away and die within a short time, usually cited as 40 days or a year. Their life force, their soul shadow, would then give strength and stability to the building.
That's horrifying. There were even shadow traders.
Apparently so. People whose job it was to surreptitiously capture shadows for architects needing to strengthen their constructions. It's a really dark side to this belief.
Okay, so shadows are souls. What about reflections? Same idea.
Pretty much the exact same logic applied to reflections, especially in water or mirrors. The Andaman Islanders explicitly regarded their reflections as their souls. Some Fijians thought they had two souls, their shadow and their reflection.
And the Motumotu people in New Guinea?
When they first saw mirrors brought by Europeans, they genuinely thought the reflections they saw were their souls looking back at them.
So naturally, reflections were vulnerable too.
Absolutely. That Aztec trick of leaving a bowl of water with a knife in it by the door. The idea was a sorcerer trying to sneak in would see his own reflection impaled by the knife and get scared off, fearing for his own soul.
And Zulus avoiding dark pools.
Yeah, or the Basutos, too. They feared crocodiles or other animals lurking in the water could literally snatch their reflection and thus their soul right off the surface, causing them to die.
This really helps make sense of those ancient warnings, doesn't it? Like, don't look at your reflection in water.
Exactly. Both Greek and Indian traditions had that maxim. Dreaming of your reflection was a death omen. The fear wasn't vanity. It was that water spirits might pull your reflection soul down into the water, leaving you soulless.
Which leads straight to Narcissus.
It's widely believed that the Narcissus myth stems directly from this ancient, very real fear about the danger of your reflection in water.
And this also explains that custom, which you still see sometimes, of covering mirrors after someone dies.
It's incredibly widespread. Oldenburg in Germany, England, Scotland, Madagascar, among Sunni Muslims. The practice of covering mirrors or turning them to the wall in a house where someone has died.
The fear being
That your soul, appearing as your reflection in the mirror, might be seen and carried off by the ghost of the person who just died. It's the same logic as not wanting to meet the ghost in a dream by sleeping in the death house.
and also why mirrors might be covered in a sick room.
Right, because when you're sick, your soul is already considered weakened or possibly partly detached, making it extra vulnerable to being captured or influenced via its reflection.
Okay, one last category. Portraits. Pictures. Same idea again.
Exactly the same core belief. The image contains the soul, or a vital part of it. Therefore, whoever possesses the portrait has power over the person depicted.
Which explains why early encounters with photography were often so fraught.
Definitely. Frazer mentions Canelos Indians in South America being really alarmed after having their photos taken, coming back the next day asking the photographer if he'd stolen their souls.
And the Watita in East Africa thinking the photographer was a soul-stealing magician.
Yes, or the Mandan Indians wanting the artist George Catlin to paint their picture if he painted someone else, as a kind of magical countermeasure, an antidote.
And this wasn't just, primitive beliefs far away. It lingered in Europe.
Oh, for sure. He notes old women in Carpathus getting angry about having their likenesses drawn, genuinely fearing they would pine away and die as a result. Russians having a fear of silhouettes for similar reasons?
Even reports from Scotland.
Yeah, relatively recently at the time Frazer was writing, people in the west of Scotland reported feeling unwell, their health declining, specifically after having their photograph taken. The belief had real persistence.
So wrapping this up, we've gone from these incredibly burdened divine kings
Whose every move was restricted because their very being was tied to cosmic order.
all the way down to the fear of losing your soul through your breath, or having your shadow stolen, or your reflection captured in water, or your essence trapped in a photograph.
And it all stems from this underlying concept of the soul as a tangible, vulnerable, sometimes external entity that needs constant protection.
It really shows how deeply these ideas were woven into the fabric of daily life, shaping everything from politics to personal habits.
Absolutely. And the key takeaway, I think, the real aha moment, is realizing that these customs, which seem so bizarre or irrational to us,
Actually have a kind of internal logic. They make perfect sense once you understand the premise,
Hmm.
that the soul is this physical, losable thing.
Right. It's not random superstition. It's a coherent, if different, worldview with practical strategies for navigating the dangers they perceived in the world. It's all about protecting this vital part of the self.
It definitely makes you pause and think, doesn't it? About our own modern lives.
Mm-hmm. What seemingly irrational beliefs or anxieties do we carry around today? Things that, if you really dug into them, might reveal some underlying logic about our own fears, how we see ourselves, our identity, our connection to the world.
Yeah, what are our modern taboos, the things we do or avoid without really questioning why, that maybe future anthropologists would look back on and try to figure out something to chew on?
Definitely something to think about.